Hey guys, welcome back to more malicious compliance Reddit stories. In this Ripestories video, I left for a 3-year military deployment and came back to find my neighbor had paved my land, fenced it off, and was charging people money to park on my property. When I confronted him, he laughed and said, "What are you gonna do about it?" Well, let me tell you exactly what I did. Let's dive right into the video. The first one is from r/maliciouscompliance and is titled, "Don't lock your car in the car park." Alright then. So I'm working in a pharmacy located in a medical center shaped like a T. Pharmacies located on one end of the arm, general practitioners located on the other end with specialists having rooms between us. Medical center covers whole width of the block with 2 car parks, one on each side of the building, each side of the T body, so unable to drive directly across from one to another. So there are designated spots marked for my profession title, pharmacist, pathologist, radiologist, doctor, etc. at their closest car park with other bays marked for either 15, 30 or 60 minutes, excluding disabled or delivery parking. Got a doctor who just parks in any bay they like in the pharmacy car park. It gets frustrating as the pharmacy closes 30 minutes before the doctors do, all the specialists being closed no less than an hour before the pharmacy closes, and we need to lock up the car park on our side of the building when we leave, and they lock up their end when they leave. Well, every night somebody goes up to the doctor's reception to inform them that there is that car there and they will need to lock the gate once they leave. It is the same system for both gates, just an unnecessary hassle to walk across the length of the building. This goes on for about a month before we get a building-wide email from the building head stating that the rules of the car parks indicating as per the rules clearly stated on the car parks, cars will be locked inside if after stated hours, and surely enough, that night the doctor parks in our car park and we leave that night with it locked inside. That was last night, and while I didn't open, there was some confrontation between the doctor and the pharmacist in charge about his car locked in the car park, and the pharmacist requested the doctor send the pharmacy a formal email to not lock his car in the car park. Email was received and forwarded to the building head straight away. Right now, about 1 hour before closing, we have called the building head to get his car towed away. Per rules of the car park, it has been several hours since it parked in a 15-minute spot, and per his email, didn't want us to lock it in our car park. I have just gone down in person to the doctor's reception, and they have called/left a voicemail message for the doctor to move his car as we are preparing to close. Update number 1. Building head is here, informed of situation and has seen email exchange with doctor. Tow truck has been called. About 30 minutes until we close. Car still in car park. Update number 2. Tow truck come and give. Car now towed away. Car park locked up. No cars in sight. Will update tomorrow with reaction. Update number 3. So apparently, building head had tried to see Dr. Towed to get the car moved before the tow truck was called. Apparently and thankfully the doctor was on short-term contract explaining only having issues for the past few weeks, so it was not difficult to terminate the contract for Dr. Toad since they were not following conditions of the contract, the evidence of the email, parking violations and something else that was going on in the clinic between Dr. Toad and fellow staff, but alas, I don't know what. Since the doctor was contacted multiple times to park his car in the right spot and to move his car that night, the building head had the right authority and no issues to tow the vehicle. The building head even had a printout of the email saying that Dr. Todd didn't want their car locked in the car park when he yelled at her last night that they should be reimbursed for the impound fee before the building head asked Dr. Todd to leave the premises before the police were called. And yeah, that's a great way to start the workday, knowing we should hopefully not see Dr. Todd again. And yeah guys, if you love the malicious compliance stories as much as I do, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments, like the video and subscribe if you haven't already for daily content. Thank you so much for your help, it is very much appreciated. And the next one is titled, "Neighbor built illegal parking lot on my property while I was deployed." Posted on r/maliciouscompliance. So for context, I'm a structural engineer in the Korean army. Talking about South Korea here. 4 years ago, when I was still in my mid-20s and saving up for my future, I bought a piece of land in Gyeonggi province. It was not much, just half an acre of vacant lot in a neighborhood that was starting to develop but hadn't quite gotten there yet. The price was reasonable and I figured I would hold onto it until I had enough money to build something or sell it for a profit. 2 months after I closed on the property, I got my deployment orders. I was being sent to South Sudan with the Hanbit unit as part of UNMISS, the United Nations mission in South Sudan, as a combat engineer. My job would involve building infrastructure, repairing roads, and supporting peacekeeping operations. It was the kind of assignment that sounded exciting when they briefed us, but once you are there, it is mostly hard work in difficult conditions. I was not worried about the land, it was just sitting there, and it would keep sitting there. I actually had the deed locked away in my apartment, all the property taxes were set up for automatic payment, and I figured when I got back in a year or so, I would start thinking seriously about what to do with it. Except I did not get back in a year. The mission kept extending, 1 year became 2, then 3, the work was important and I was good at it, so they kept me there. I didn't mind too much, I mean, the deployment pay was good and I was building experience that would serve me well in my career. But I did think about that land sometimes sitting empty back home, waiting for me. When I finally got back to Korea in early spring, after 3 full years away, I had a list of things to take care of. Reconnect with family, find a new apartment since I'd given up my old one before deploying, and of course, checking on the land. I drove out to see the property on a Saturday afternoon, about 2 weeks after I had returned. I actually remembered the area as half developed, some new buildings, some empty lots, a few businesses starting to pop up, but as I got closer, I could see the neighborhood had filled in quite a bit. There were new apartment buildings, a convenience store, a couple restaurants. The area had grown while I was gone. I turned onto the street where my lot was located, and I'd looked at it on the satellite view online, but the images were old from before I had deployed. I was curious to see what the neighborhood around it looked like now. Then I turned the corner and saw my lot. I sat in my car staring at it for a full minute. My heart was pounding. I felt a sick feeling in my stomach like someone had punched me. I checked the address on my phone 3 times, hoping I had made a mistake or something, but no, this was definitely my property. I got out, my hands shaking a little, and walked up to the fence. I could not believe what I was seeing. The entire half acre of my property was paved. Smooth black asphalt professionally done with crisp white lines marking out parking spaces. There were about 30 spaces total, arranged in neat rows. The whole thing was surrounded by a chain link fence with a rolling gate at the entrance. The gate had an automated arm barrier and a payment kiosk with a QR code scanner. There was a small sign wired to the gate that said, "Premium VIP parking for Club Eclipse guests only." Club Eclipse. I looked across the street. There was a nightclub with that name, a fairly upscale-looking place with purple LED lighting around the entrance. On a Saturday afternoon it was closed, but I could see from the setup that it was the kind of venue that would get busy at night. I walked around the perimeter of my property, the paving job was professional, the fence posts were set in concrete and the payment kiosk had a weatherproof casing, and it looked like it had been there for a while. This was not just some temporary setup. Someone had invested serious money into this. I took photos of everything, the lot, the fence, the signage, the payment kiosk, and then I went home and dug out my property deed to make absolutely sure I had not lost my mind. No, the deed was clear, the land was mine, I had bought it, I'd been paying taxes on it, and nobody had asked my permission to pave it and turn it into a commercial parking operation. The next day, Sunday, I went back around 10 PM when the club was open and the parking lot was full. And yeah guys, honestly, if something like this happened to you, what would you have done if you were in OP's situation? Honestly, I think my mind would be blown because I'm already speechless when my entitled neighbor here in real life is parking in front of my house. So someone building an entire parking lot on your private property without any permission is just insane. So yeah, let me know what you would have done in the comments. And now let's continue. The cars were coming and going. I watched from across the street as drivers pulled up to the kiosk, scanned the QR code, paid, and the gate arm lifted to let them in. When they left, they scanned another code at the exit kiosk and the gate opened. I counted the cars. It was 28 spaces filled. The rate displayed on the entrance kiosk was 5,001 per hour. If the lot stayed even half full on a weekend night, someone was making very good money. And just to be clear here guys, I think 5,000 Korean won is around $13 or $14 per hour, which is not cheap it seems like. Anyway, they were making money from my land. On a Monday morning I walked into the nightclub. It was closed, but there was someone inside doing what looked like inventory work behind the bar. I knocked on the glass door until he looked up. He came over and opened the door a crack. "We are closed," he said. "We open at 8. "I'm not here as a customer," I told him. "I need to speak to the owner." "It's about the parking lot." He studied me for a moment, then opened the door wider. "Wait here." A few minutes later, a man in his late 30s came out from the back office. He was dressed casually, but expensively designer jeans, a fitted black shirt, good watch. He looked me over with the kind of expression that said he was used to being in charge. "I'm Kevin Song. I own this place. You wanted to talk about the parking?" I introduced myself and told him I owned the lot across the street. He raised an eyebrow. "The parking lot?" "Yeah. I just returned from a 3-year deployment overseas and I found that someone paved my land and turned it into a parking lot without my permission. Do you know anything about that?" He stared at me for a second and then laughed. It was not a friendly laugh, a dismissive one. "Ha, you own that lot? That's rich." "I have the deed. I bought it 4 years ago, before I deployed." "And you just left it sitting there for 3 years?" "It's my property. I can leave it however I want." He crossed his arms. "Not when it's bringing down the neighborhood, you can't." I felt my face getting hot, but I kept my voice level. "I don't care what you think about how I manage my property. The point is that you built on my land without any permission. I need you to remove everything and restore the lot to its original condition." Kevin's smile faded. "Remove it? Do you have any idea how much I spent on that lot? The paving alone was over 20 million won. The fence, the gate system, the payment kiosks, I'm into that property for close to 50 million won. I didn't ask you to spend that money. You should have checked who owned the land before you built on it." "I checked," he said flatly. "The lot was empty. It had been empty for years. I asked around, nobody knew who owned it. So I took initiative. I improved the neighborhood. I created something useful. My customers needed parking. There was a perfect space just sitting there wasting." And by the way, guys, taking initiative and improving the neighborhood, that's a nice word for stealing someone's property. Props to Kevin. That does not give you the right to take someone else's property, dude. He stepped closer, still smiling, but not in a friendly way. "Right? I tell you what I think. I think you're a fool for leaving that land empty for 3 years. I think you should be grateful I did something with it. If you don't like how I'm running things, then run it yourself. But you can't because I have the keys, I have the system, and I have the money, so go ahead and try." I stood there looking at him. Run it myself? "Yeah, if you think you can do better, but you won't. You will realize this is too complicated for some army engineer who's been playing in the dirt in Africa. This is business, my business, and I'm not removing a damn thing. If you got a problem with that, call your lawyer, call the police, I don't care. You're not touching my parking lot." He turned and walked back towards his office. The conversation was over. I left the club and went straight to a law office I'd found online that specialized in property disputes. The consultation fee was reasonable, and I met with a lawyer. I explained the situation. She listened carefully, took notes, and asked to see my property deed and tax payment records. I'd brought everything with me. After reviewing the documents, she sat back in her chair and said, "This is actually more straightforward than you might think. Under Korean property law, specifically the civil code provisions on accession, anything permanently attached to land belongs to the landowner, and your neighbor built a permanent structure, the paving, the fence, the gate system, on your property without your permission. So that means it all legally belongs to you now." I was not sure I'd heard her correctly. It belongs to me? The parking lot? Yeah. The legal principle is called accession to immovables. When someone builds on another person's land without permission here, the structure becomes part of the land and belongs to the landowner. The person who built it doesn't get to keep it or remove it without your permission. He may be entitled to compensation for his expenses in some cases, but only if he built it in good faith, meaning he genuinely did not know it was your land. Given that property records are public and easily searchable, it's gonna be very difficult for him to prove that. So, I own the parking lot. Yes, you own the parking lot, she confirmed. Actually, everything on your land is yours. The question is, what you want to do about it? That made me feel better. This was not some weird loophole, it was established law. What are my options? I asked. You can demand that he remove everything at his own expense. You can sue him for damages and lost use of your property, or, she paused, you can simply take control of the lot and operate it yourself. It's your property and your parking facility. You have every legal right to do that. Just take it over? Yeah. Change the locks, change the payment system codes, put up your own signage. It is yours. If he objects, he's welcome to sue you, but he will lose. The law is very clear on this. I thought about Kevin's face when he had told me to run it myself. His smug certainty that I couldn't touch his business. How do I take it over? I asked. The lawyer smiled slightly. That's a practical question, not a legal one. But if you are asking if you have the legal right to access your own property and modify equipment on it, well, the answer is absolutely yes. I would recommend documenting everything you do with photos and keeping records of any money you collect, though. If he calls the cops, show them your deed. If he sues, call me. I hired her on the spot. That week, I did some research. The gate system Kevin had installed was a fairly standard model used in parking lots throughout Korea. The automated arm barrier was controlled by a relay board connected to the payment kiosks. The kiosks themselves used QR code payment systems linked to a business account. It was not complicated, it was basically just a programmed sequence: scan QR code, process payment, and send signal to open the gate. As a structural engineer in the army, I'd worked with electrical systems way more complex than this one. I'd programmed PLCs for water treatment facilities in South Sudan. I could handle a parking lot gate. On a Tuesday night, well after midnight when the club was closed and the lot was empty, I went back with a toolbox. I had purchased everything I needed earlier that day: a new PLR 400 controller unit, new padlocks for the equipment boxes, new QR code stickers linked to a business payment account I'd set up in my name, and I opened the control box for the entrance gate. Inside was exactly what I'd expected: the relay board that controlled the gate motor and ticket dispensers. I disconnected the relay board that controlled the gate motor and ticket dispensers. I replaced it with the standard PLR 400 controller I'd ordered online and programmed with the new access codes. The wiring was color-coded and straightforward. 20 minutes and it was done. I did the same thing at the exit gate, then I changed the padlocks on both control boxes. I printed new QR code stickers linking to my business account and covered Kevin's codes with them. I installed a new sign I had made: public parking, 5,000 won per hour. The whole operation took less than 2 hours. When I was finished, I owned and controlled the parking lot in every practical sense. Kevin's payment system was disconnected, his access codes didn't work anymore, and the gates responded to my system now. I went home and barely slept. Part of me expected the cops to show up at my door or something, but nothing actually happened. The next day was Wednesday, the club would be open that night, and I knew Kevin would discover what I had done. I decided to be there when he did. I parked across the street around 9 p.m. and waited. The first few cars arrived around 9:30, they pulled up to the entrance, scanned the QR code, paid, and the gate opened. Everything worked perfectly, the money went into my account. Around 10 p.m., Kevin came out of the club. He was with another man, probably a manager or employee. They were looking at the parking lot entrance, and I could see Kevin gesturing animatedly. Then he walked across the street to the control box. He pulled out a key. It didn't work. I had changed the locks. He tried again, getting more aggressive with it. Then he pulled out his phone, probably trying to access the system remotely, but nothing. His access codes were gone. That is when he saw me sitting in my car across the street. I got out, walked over. "Evening," I said. His face was red. "What the hell did you do?" "I took your advice. I'm running it myself." "You broke into my equipment. You hacked my system." "I did not hack anything. I replaced equipment on my property with my own equipment. That parking lot is on my land, which makes it my parking lot. I'm just operating my own facility here." "You cannot do this. This is theft. This is vandalism." "Call the cops if you want," I said calmly. "I have my property deed in my car. I'll be happy to show it to them." He stared at me, his jaw working. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. 10 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. Kevin immediately launched into his story, talking fast, and his voice was getting louder. "Officers, this man broke into my parking lot equipment and vandalized my property. He hacked into my payment systems and he's stealing from me right now. I have customers using that lot and he's taking their money. This is theft. I want him arrested." One of the officers held up a hand to stop him, then turned to me. His expression was neutral, but I could tell that he was sizing up the situation. "Sir, can you explain what's going on here?" I pulled out my property documents and handed it to him. "Well, that parking lot is on my land. I own the property and this man built the parking facility without my permission while I was deployed overseas for 3 years. Under Korean law, anything built on my land belongs to me, so I'm just operating my own parking facility here." The officer examined my deed carefully. He looked at the property boundaries, looked at the parking lot, and then looked at Kevin. "Is this your land?" he asked Kevin. "No, but did you have permission from the landowner to build on it?" "The lot was abandoned, nobody was using it." "That's not the same as having permission, sir." The officer handed my deed back to me. "This appears to be a civil property dispute. The deed shows that he owns the land. If you believe you have the rights to the structures on it, you will need to resolve that in court, but we cannot arrest someone for managing their own property." Kevin's face went from red to purple. "This is BS, he broke into my equipment." "Did he break anything?" the officer asked. "He changed the locks, he replaced my system." "On his own property," the officer said. "Sir, I understand that you're upset, but this is not a criminal matter, you need to contact a lawyer." The police left. Kevin stood there staring at me with pure hatred. "You're gonna regret this," he said quietly. "I'm gonna sue you for everything you've got. That lot cost me 50 million won. You're gonna pay for every single one of it." And I guess, no pun intended, "Talk to your lawyer," I said. "I've already talked to mine." He went back to his club. I stayed in my car and watched the parking lot operate. Cars came and went. The system worked perfectly. By 11, I'd made more in 2 hours than I used to make in a week at my old part-time job before the military. Over that first weekend, I barely left the area. I just wanted to make sure the system kept working and to be present if Kevin tried anything. He didn't though. The club operated normally, his customers used the parking lot, my parking lot, and paid me for the privilege. The following week, Kevin's lawyer sent me a letter. It demanded that I cease operations of the parking facility immediately and restore all systems to their previous state. It threatened legal action if I didn't comply within 5 business days. I forwarded the letter to my lawyer, and she sent a response explaining that I was operating a facility on my own land and that Mr. Song had built the facility without any permission. She included copies of the relevant property law statutes and informed them that if they wished to pursue the matter, we would counterclaim for 3 years of lost use of the property plus damages. Well, they filed the lawsuit anyway against us. The lawsuit dragged on for nearly 8 months. There were multiple rounds of document requests, depositions, and procedural hearings. Kevin's lawyer kept trying different angles, claiming adverse possession, arguing I'd abandoned the property, and even suggesting I'd somehow conspired to entrap his client. Well, none of it held up, but each claim meant more delays and more paperwork. My lawyer handled most of it, but I had to attend a few hearings and provide testimony about my deployment timeline and property purchase. At the next hearing, she asked Kevin's lawyer a simple question: did your client verify the land ownership before beginning construction? The lawyer tried to argue that the land appeared abandoned and that Kevin had made reasonable efforts to identify the owner. Property records are public, the judge said. They are available online. It takes like 5 minutes to check who owns the piece of land. Did your client check? There was a long pause. No, Your Honor. The judge ruled in my favor on all counts. She stated clearly that under Korean property law, the parking facility had been built without any permission on my land and therefore belonged to me. Kevin was not entitled to compensation because he hadn't acted in good faith. He had never attempted to verify ownership or obtain permission before building. The lawsuit was dismissed and Kevin had to pay his own legal fees. More importantly though, the lawsuit brought attention to the fact that he had built the parking lot without proper permits. The city got involved. It turned out Kevin hadn't gotten construction permits and hadn't gotten commercial use permits and had not registered the parking facility as a business operation. The city fined him heavily. Between the legal fees, the fines, and losing his parking revenue, Kevin's club started struggling too. I heard through the neighborhood that he was having trouble paying his bills. 6 months after the lawsuit ended, Club Eclipse closed down. The space was taken over by a restaurant. Meanwhile, I kept running the parking lot. I installed better lighting for safety and put up clearer signage. I adjusted the rates slightly. 5,000 won per hour was fair for the area. The restaurant that replaced Kevin's club even started recommending my lot to their customers, and the revenue stayed strong. The land I had bought as a long-term investment had turned into an actual business, and it was all thanks to Kevin. He had spent 50 million won improving my property, turned it into a profitable facility, and then practically gift-wrapped it for me by telling me to run it myself. And yeah guys, Kevin really thought he could just pave over a combat engineer's land because he assumed it was abandoned. But to be honest, my absolute favorite part was when he literally told OP to run it himself. I mean, the guy basically built a 50 million won money printer, handed over the keys, and dared OP to press start. The stupidity and arrogance on that guy is absolutely insane. But I guess props to Kevin for funding OP's new passive income stream, while simultaneously getting his own nightclub shut down by the city. Thanks for the free real estate. And now some comments from Reddit. Comment number 1 said, okay, hot take incoming, sorry in advance. Kevin is obviously the bigger a-hole here, no question. Building a commercial parking lot on someone else's land is wild. The lot was abandoned defense is the property law equivalent of, well, the door was unlocked, so he deserved the L. But, and by the way guys, when someone on Reddit says but, nothing good ever comes after it. OP, you're not coming out of this clean either. You had multiple options. The second the lawyer told you the law was on your side, you could have negotiated, you could have offered Kevin a lease, you could have done literally anything other than wait until Wednesday night, sit in your car like the end of a revenge thriller and stage a confrontation in front of his employees and the police you know you would be calling. The lawyer told you you had already won, but you wanted that moment. This was really about humiliating a guy who insulted you, and you got to do it with the law on your side, which is honestly the dream scenario, but let's call it what it is. Everyone sucks here. Kevin worse by a mile, yeah, but you wanted the win and the show. Another person in the Reddit comments said, NTA, NTA, I cannot believe people in the comments are actually trying to everyone sucks here this one. I mean, you served your country for 3 years, you paid your property taxes the entire time, and then you came home home and found a guy that had paved your land, fenced it off, and installed a payment kiosk. Your response was absolutely perfect, and I have no sympathy for Kevin. And before we end the video, let's read another funny malicious compliance story. This one is titled, "I parked exactly where you told me to." So I work at an EMS agency, and a decade ago one of our bosses, who has an outright hostility towards my coworkers and just sits in an office all day, decided that our out-of-tune times and late responses were because we just don't go on calls and not due to the short staffing and lack of equipment to go in service with. Our post in the one town has a proper quarters with furniture, bathrooms, TV, microwave, fridge, etc. And well, apparently, per the boss's opinion, we were late because we took our time and had to get dressed every call and go to the bathroom after the tone sounded, and his poor management was entirely our fault. Of course, this was nonsense and we were basically always ready, but oftentimes responding from out of town due to covering multiple areas at once. So the boss proposed a new punishment: post a mile down the street at a busy intersection where we supposed to sit in either a car dealership lot or a gas station. Well, we had very good relationships with these businesses and asked them to complain about our loitering, to which they did. Bossman did not care though and told us to figure it out. We are not gonna go back to sitting on our asses all day. I mean, we work 12-hour shifts and access to quarters in between calls is not asking much, and that certainly was not why we missed response times. It was just poor resource management on the boss's part. Well, since we were posted at this intersection though, 3 lanes going each direction, we decided we would just throw our lights on and sit in the middle of the intersection until our next call. That lasted about half an hour before a cop showed up who we knew very well and who in fact used to work with us. He thought it was hysterical and at our request called dispatch to ask what was happening, and we told them over the radio, to which the supervisor also thought it was completely appropriate given the directive and complaints. Well, after a 45-second long conversation with the boss man's direct manager, that post was abolished and our quarters were returned. That particular boss is not involved in operational decisions anymore, and they don't really let him interact with the field crews anymore. And yeah guys, thanks for watching, I will see you again tomorrow.